This past week, Father Brian and I went to a funeral for a priest. The homily began with a quote from Chaim Potok in a novel entitled The Chosen, not the TV series. Human beings do not live forever, Rowan. We live less than the time it takes to blink an eye if we measure our lives against eternity. So it may be asked, what value is there to human life? There is so much pain in the world. What does it mean to have to suffer so much if our lives are nothing more than the blink of an eye? I learned a long time ago, Ron, that a blink of an eye in itself is nothing. But the eye that blinks, that is something. A span of life is nothing, but the man who lives that span, he is something. He can fill that tiny span with meaning. So its quality is immeasurable, though its quantity may be insignificant. Do you understand what I'm saying? A man must fill his life with meaning. Meaning is not automatically given to life. It's hard work to fill one's life with meaning. That I do not think you understand yet. A life filled with meaning is worthy of rest. I want to be worthy of rest when I am no longer here. That's pretty much the last thing I heard in the homily. My mind took off from there. What is the meaning of life? Of your life? Of mine? If you don't have an answer, that's okay. It seems to have taken Jesus some 30 years of his young life to figure out what was his meaning. Perhaps that quest began for him when he was just 13 years old and wandered off to the temple to talk to the rabbis, to be in conversations with them about it all. Perhaps. Whatever your answer is, for it to qualify as meaning, it's got to involve something of lasting value that's not going to pass in 5 years or 10, or given the circumstances of the world or of your own life, or when a person passes themselves or their career or their vocation. Whatever for us qualifies as meaning has to be something bigger than things that will pass away. Those are the only things that are worth our life. Because even love is bigger than the people I love. It is something discovered in crises, most often, it seems, but it holds in good times too. But it's something that has to do with all these, the good times and the bad, that gives you life, that gives you life, that gives you reason to get up in the morning, that gives you reason tonight to set the alarm to do it all over again the next morning. Meaning is why you are here sucking air on this earth, and is what you are for. That's meaning. Meaning is something we all seek. It's something we have to discover, uncover, and name. It ain't easy, but it's so worth it to come to. And because I love you, I want you to search for the meaning of your life now, so that it's available to you when you need it, so that it's available to you to guide you and to guide your choices. Perhaps when you turn 30, but perhaps right now. Science tells us that having a sense of purpose can lower levels of stress, rest, and contribute to longevity. In troubled times, finding a sense of purpose is necessary for the young and for the old, who can all become too quickly discouraged and despairing. I speak of the kind of purpose that gives us not simply a sense of aim, but the potential for fulfillment. Connecting to it gives us a deeper sense of self and also a capacity to respond spontaneously to critical turning points in our lives. Life is primarily a quest for meaning. To live a life of meaning is true joy. Witness Job in the first reading you heard this morning. Job is frustrated. He's in despair, even. Listen again to some of these descriptive words. Like a slave who longs for the shade, like laborer longing for wages. I've been assigned months of misery, troubled nights that have allotted to me. And in bed I say, when shall I arise? The night just drags on. I am filled with restlessness until the dawn. My days come to an end without hope. Remember, my life is just like the wind. I shall not see happiness again. He was struggling mightily with the meaning of his life. He's having a really bad day. And because of his suffering, he lost his sense of meaning. It might have been there when everything was going great and he had a great wife and great kids and great wealth and great success, but that all taken away like that. We humans need meaning if we are to survive the worst of days, the Job kind of days. And we need to seek for it, actively seek for it if we're going to find our way, if we're going to know ultimate satisfaction, rest. I know the way I phrase the long sought-after meaning of my life, but it might not work for you, and that's perfectly okay. But where I landed in my search for meaning was a consequence of studying Jesus a lot, a whole lot, getting into the scriptures and underneath the scriptures, deciding that this book has been around for way too long to ignore it. And now, in just 10 days, in the season we call Lent, you and I, we're going to go into the desert with him. And we're going to search for meaning alongside of him. He was sorely tempted there. He even went there to get tempted, perhaps to make more solid, more real the meaning he chose for his life. He was to be tempted away from what he had discerned was the meaning and purpose of his life. And once he found it, he was undeterred. And it was his life source in the midst of tremendous suffering and all the same discouragement that Job experienced in that first reading. He went through everything Job went through. That's one of the reasons why we say in our creed again and again, and why I like the Apostles' Creed so powerful to me, is he descended into hell. It's probably the most frequently asked question of me about our faith. Why did Jesus descend into hell? What does that mean? He descended into our hells. He descended into our hells and still does. Even after Jesus discovered the meaning of his life, he would have said the same words of Job, because they're just honest. They're just the struggles that come even with having meaning to our lives. It unlocks everything for us. And what was the meaning of Jesus' life? Listen for it as we express it in ritual here at this Mass and every Mass. When the priest in his name takes the bread into his hands and says what Jesus said on the night before he died, and it's the same with the chalice. Listen for it at this Mass and every Mass. It might unlock for you the meaning of his life and the meaning of yours. It's a pattern happening all around us in nature as well. Just listen with your eyes and your ears when it's time at what we call the consecration. And real briefly, witness Paul in that second reading. Paul, for him, the meaning of his life came crashing into him unexpectedly while he was going about the persecution of the followers of Jesus. Unexpectedly, this meaning crashed into him and reordered everything so that he was positively driven to write and speak of Jesus and his revelation. In his own words, "An obligation has been imposed on me. I am absolutely driven, and woe to me if I do not preach it." And I might add, woe to me if I don't stay true to the meaning of my life. A true sense of meaning and purpose, it's not an option. It's a necessity. And it's seated in every human heart. Finding it connects us to our core, to our soul. We experience ourselves centered and able to respond spontaneously to this rapidly changing world. It's the beginning of a meaningful, full life for the young and for the old. Like Paul and like Jesus before him, finding and living our soul's purpose is the way that each of us, in our own way, can contribute to the making and the shaping of the next version of the world. Aligned with a purpose greater than ourselves, only then will we rest. Rest in peace. At the end, at my end, at your end.